All right, today we're diving deep into a pretty radical theory. It suggests that the United States is going through a total reset, and not just politically or economically, but get this, cosmically. We're going to unpack a document that connects these huge planetary cycles to the explosion of AI and the very future of America itself. So let's just get right into it.
So this entire analysis, this whole idea, it really boils down to one huge provocative question. Is there some kind of predictable cycle of national collapse and rebirth? And if so, is America's time up? Well, the source material we're digging into today argues that the answer is a definitive yes. Okay, so before we get to the wild predictions, we really need to understand the core engine of this theory. It all kicks off with this idea of a 250-year cycle that, according to this analysis, is actually being driven by the planets themselves. At the very heart of this theory is something called America's first ever Pluto return. Now, in astrology, this is when the planet Pluto completes one full orbit and comes back to the exact same spot it was in when a nation was founded. You can think of it like a 250-year cosmic audit, where the theory claims a country's entire identity. I'm talking its institutions, its values, its foundation, gets torn down to the studs to be rebuilt from scratch. But here's where it gets really interesting. According to the source, what makes this period so unique is that the Pluto return is being supercharged by a really rare event called a triple ingress. This is when three huge outer planets, Pluto, the planet of destruction and rebirth, Neptune, the planet of illusion, and Uranus, the planet of rebellion, all change signs at pretty much the same time. The theory presents this as a perfect storm, the cosmic engine driving the massive shifts we've seen since 2024. All right, so with that framework in mind, let's shift to the document's retrospective audit of the last couple of years. It frames everything that happened in 2024 and 2025 not as some kind of random chaos, but as totally predictable symptoms of this cosmic reset in full swing. And this slide just perfectly lays out the core conflict. The analysis describes 2024 as a kind of cosmic tug-of-war. So on one side, you've got Capricorn, representing the old guard, top-down power, centralized control, the state. And on the other side, you have Aquarius, representing the new power, decentralized networks, digital freedom, the collective. This friction right here is the key to their whole theory. So the theory argues that you have to forget about Democrat versus Republican when you look back at the 2024 election. It claims it wasn't a simple political contest. Instead, it was the physical result of that cosmic tug-of-war, a systemic rejection of what the document calls the Uniparty class, that entrenched administrative state that kind of governs no matter who's actually in power. The document also points to institutional decay as a major symptom of this reset. I mean, look at this slide. It shows a dramatic freefall in public trust for federal law enforcement. And the crucial point here is that this wasn't just a partisan thing. The idea that these agencies were weaponized became a dominant narrative across the entire political spectrum. And that creates a huge vacuum of authority. This conflict wasn't just political, it was also playing out on an economic battlefield. So here you see the state pushing for more control with things like central bank digital currencies, while at the same time individuals were moving toward decentralized options to get more autonomy. The document basically frames the state's crackdown on crypto not as protecting consumers, but as a desperate attempt to hold on to its monopoly on money. Okay, let's move to the next phase of this audit, which really hones in on the massive technological upheaval that kicked off in mid-2025. This is where the theory claims the actual rules of law and even truth itself just started to be completely rewritten. And what was the trigger for all this? Well, according to the source, it was when the planet Uranus, the great disruptor in this framework, moved into the sign of Gemini in July 2025. And Gemini is all about communication and information. So that combination is presented as the catalyst for what the document calls the AI summer of 2025. And that disruption, it led directly to a crisis of truth. That number you see, 8 million, that's the explosion of deepfakes detected in 2025 alone. It created what the document calls a liar's dividend, a situation where it's just so easy to fake evidence that even real evidence starts to become dismissible. I mean, that completely undermines the entire judicial system, which is built on the very idea of verifiable proof. But at the exact same time, AI was also, in a way, democratizing legal warfare. This slide shows how regular citizens, armed with what the document calls robot lawyers, started to just flood the courts with lawsuits they filed themselves, completely bypassing the traditional legal establishment. It was nothing short of a structural revolt, and it was all powered by technology. So that's the look back. That's the audit. Now, the document pivots to its really high-stakes forecast for the current year, for 2026. This is where it predicts that all the chaos of the last 2 years is about to collide with a new, much harsher reality. The forecast points to a few key astrological triggers for 2026. You've got Saturn entering Aries, which is interpreted as the state at war. Then its alignment with Neptune is called the collapse of secrets. And these are linked to real-world deadlines, like the one for the Colorado River, leading to a forecast of a literal water war. And this brings us to what is really the centerpiece of the entire forecast, a month-by-month risk calendar for 2026. It predicts a judicial hammer in February as the state tries to crush that AI legal revolt. It forecasts a great leak of state secrets in March, followed by a major cyber shock in July. The theory basically lays out this relentless timeline of escalating crises, from constitutional standoffs all the way to resource wars. So you have to ask, right? If the old system completely breaks down, what rises from the ashes? Well, the final part of this analysis isn't just about collapse. It actually predicts the emergence of a whole new societal order, built around a radically new kind of citizen. The document calls this new archetype the single justice, and it's basically a combination of the citizen journalist and the citizen jurist, an individual who's empowered by technology to hold power accountable, and, this is the crucial part, to administer justice outside of the traditional state system. And you might be wondering, how on earth could that work? Well, this slide gives us a glimpse. The theory predicts the Napsterization of law, where these decentralized dispute resolution platforms start handling conflicts. I mean, think of it, blockchain-based courts for commerce, where game theory and code actually replace judges and lawyers, creating a whole parallel justice system. And the analysis leaves us with this final, incredibly stark piece of advice. Do not wait for the state to save you. It is busy saving itself. It's a really provocative conclusion that just forces you to ask, in a world where old institutions are crumbling, is total self-reliance the only path forward? And what does a society that's built on that principle even look like?